America. My name is Osei-Frimpong. I come to you live every Monday and Thursday. Monday I do a more relationship show. Thursday I do a more politics show. And today I'm going to tell you how feminism killed families. And it's not obvious, right? So in theory, the idea that women should be treated as equals actually works, and it's true, right? But in the workplace, are we talking about women doing the same jobs? Women being roofers and HVAC people, at the rates of men, and working on oil rigs and all that stuff that men do, trash collectors, all that stuff, and all that stuff that men do. And insofar as they are, they should be. And insofar as we suppress wages that women do historically, but are still important things, we inappropriately suppress those wages, that should be gotten rid of, right? So we need to look at all forms of occupational segregation, and ask ourselves why women aren't doing these things and why men aren't doing those things, right? So those kinds of questions are actually healthy. Now, in the household, it gets a little bit tricky because it's not obvious what men do, right? So if you want equality in the household and you just pretend that men don't do anything except maybe provide a check that they get outside of the household, then if a woman has her, has enough money and doesn't depend on the man's check, then it seems like ripe for divorce. Why not? He's just dead weight. Get rid of that guy. What else is he contributing? If all men contribute, if all men contribute is equal and the same uniform to what women contribute in the household, then why not get rid of that guy? The problem is people who are socialized into gender actually contribute different things, right? So when we kick out men from the household in a gender normative household, in people who've been socialized with like severe gender identities, we actually lose what men as social, that aspect of household labor and thought and responsibility and activity that men contribute, which often is like in terms of raising children, it's actually structuring the raising of children, right? So it actually, I'm not one of these cats who think that mothers are particularly great parents. I think their mothers might be good mothers sometimes, but I don't think they're particularly great parents. I don't think fathers are particularly great parents either, as fathers. I think they have a structural advantage because at least they're trying to prepare kids for the world that they know, as opposed to mothers preparing kids for a world that they only hear about in a way that's a little bit dubious. So I don't think any gendered parent is particularly good at the job without the other. The problem is women who don't think, or the feminists who told women that there is no complementary there's no complementary activity that men do in the household, and then they're surprised where their kids are kind of useless. A lot of single moms are raising useless kids and they're surprised why they're useless or like actively pernicious. And the thing is, you didn't know what conventionally guys contributed to the household when you kicked out their father, and now their kid is without a father, right? And that sphere of education that conventionally men have, delivered into the household. You didn't think it, feminists told you that it doesn't exist. And somehow you got in the conception that all household labor was cooking, cleaning, and feeding and looking after kids as if they were brute animals. So if you just kind of, made sure that they were fed and cleaned, then you did your job, then nature would take its course. The problem is we live in an artificial world that was made often by men and that you didn't prepare your kid for, right? So you took away their father, and then you took away their way to navigate the world in a very profound manner, and also casual about divorce. And if you can't trust, let's be honest, this whole idea of irreconcilable differences is a form of child abuse with respect to children, because you're telling children that reason can't hold institutions together. We can't work it out. Like, reason can't hold institutions together. And if reason can't hold institutions together, why should they listen to any of your reasons? Right? Like, you're a living example that reason can't hold institutions together. So the kid's going to have a basic distrust of all institutional relations. Or if they trust institutions, it's not going to be based on the reasoning of those institutions, because you're realizing a model that says reason can't hold institutions together. So yeah, forms of child abuse, casual divorce is forms of child abuse all the way around. I've already done an issue about casual divorce. What I want to do this episode on is the contribution that conventional men have given to the household. And I'm not a fan of conventional masculinity. I'm definitely not a fan of conventional femininity. Both of them I think could go to the birds. But conventional women thinking that they could raise kids without conventional men is what leads to a lot of useless kids. Because you were overlooking the labor and the risk and the activity and the education that was being dispensed by conventional manhood. And, it's not just that these conventional women who then get liberated and divorce their spouses, they can't raise girls, they can't raise boys, because this idea that women who are gendered with a strong gender identity as women can raise girls is just ridiculous, because women aren't honest with women about what it is to be a woman. And they can't raise guys because they can't raise guys to be men because they don't know what they haven't been in those spaces and the pressure in those spaces. And they can't even raise guys to be with women because, once again, women aren't honest with women about what women want. So it's just a disaster. And if you have a conventional gender ideology, I strongly suggest you stay married for the good of the kids, because parenthood is a full-time activity, and yeah, for a few reasons. Well, I might do a whole episode on the irreconcilable differences point, because that's actually important. If you're divorcing for irreconcilable differences, you're teaching a kid that reason can't hold an institution together. And the kids need a unity of the household in order to understand who they are relative to who they're immediately connected to relative to the rest of the world. So if you're not sustaining a household because reason you can't think through how to work out the problems to sustain a household, don't expect your kid to be able to think through any other sort of problem. So they'll lean on all these other non-rational tics to get through their life. And maybe that's the way you want to raise your kids, but I want to raise my kids to be able to reason through their problems. And so they have to know that reason solves problems. Right. So the point of equality in the household, when you just ignore the particular gendered labor that men did, and women were just looking at their situation saying that well, I'm doing all the work, and as long as I can get money, then since there isn't a qualitative difference between what I'm bringing to the table and what he's bringing to the table, except he brings money. Once I figure out a way to get money, I can just kick out the dude, because children don't need fathers, or whatever conventional men have brought to the household. But it turns out that children do need fathers, and whatever conventional men have brought to the household, right? And obviously, or maybe it's not obvious, I want to get rid of all of these gender identities. I'm not a fan of conventional womanhood or conventional manhood. But the thing is, I see how they work together. What I'm not a fan of is conventional womanhood pretending that conventional manhood doesn't offer any particular qualitative contribution, both to the world in doing the jobs that conventional women don't do, and to the household in doing the jobs that conventional women don't do. For example, I don't really care if I'm liked by other parents in a way that's good for my parents. My kids are really good because I don't care if I'm liked by other parents. I don't even care if I'm liked by my kids. And it turns out that parents who do care if they're liked by their kids aren't the best parents. And one of the reasons why I don't care if I'm liked by either other parents or even liked by my kids is because I am not a conventional woman. Conventional women tend to care about those things in a way that I do not. And it turns out my kids like me. Other parents fear me, which they should. And that's just how it is. But I am that way. One of the reasons I'm that way is because I haven't been socialized to be a conventional woman. And in America, a conventional woman reads white. And conventional man reads right too, but that's a problem for different reasons. But those gender ideologies are meant to work in a complementary fashion. Now they're meant to work in a complementary fashion in like an awful part of a race game too. So like, that's not good. But this illusion that conventional fathers, conventional men in the United States do not contribute to their household because all work in terms of household labor was done by women. And so if they can get the monetary contribution by conventional men, then they don't actually need conventional men. That is a form of child abuse. It overlooks the qualitative difference between what, even bad fathers, even like 50s fathers, Father Knows Best. The show was called Father Knows Best because, Ward Cleaver, is that? No, I'll leave it to be. Anyway, the dad was supposed to actually contribute knowledge if he didn't vacuum. He might not have vacuumed and done dishes, but he's supposed to contribute knowledge. So what happens when you kick out that father? Well, you get, a clean house with no knowledge. And then when kids ask questions, you know what they don't get at the end? Knowledge, right? And so a lot of good single moms feel like they did their job. They cooked, they cleaned, they kept their kids clean. They cooked, they cleaned, they kept their kids fed. But it turns out that they couldn't provide the knowledge that they didn't respect was contributed by the father. So the kid ends up a problem or some variety of wastrel. So I'm going to hit the opening and then look at some of the people who I suspect are yelling at me at chat for saying what I'm saying.
Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and it can feature in your front.
So if you're just coming now, the highlights are that we didn't know that men were contributing we didn't know that men had a particular practical contribution to the household in terms of raising children and even like the managing of the household in other ways. And so the discourse of equality conflated conventional women's work with conventional men's work and then just said all work was women's work. So what happened if women could figure out a way to get the monetary contribution that was supposedly contributed by men as a sole contribution to the household, then they didn't really just need men. So you had a form of feminism that just told women that unless they really like the guy, they don't really need him. The kids don't really profit for them. If they can afford not to have them, then might as well just not have them because they don't contribute anything that you don't also contribute. But it turns out that conventional women only had a partial understanding of both the world and their contribution to it and their contribution to the household. And so you kicked out all these fathers and now we're surprised. And now you're horrified by the idea that maybe your kids would have done better had you not kicked out their father, which is true. And it's your fault. But it's both your fault because, you filed the paperwork, but it's not your fault because you were sold a bill of goods. You were sold a bill of goods that you even had the disposition to do what conventional fathers did. Maybe you, by the time, you're in your 30s or 40s, you are so far into your gender ideology, you don't even have the disposition to do what really good fathers would do. You don't have the disposition to come up with the vision and the plan and the discipline and not being liked by other people. That just might not be your cultivated disposition by now, except that's what children need. And under the ideology, it would have been supplied by the guy you felt casual kicking out because now you don't need his money. So you kicked him out because you don't need his money, but it turns out he would have been contributing other things that you didn't think were important at the time, but it turns out your kid could have profited from. Right? So this partial understanding of conventional gender roles in the household led to you making bad decisions about what your household needs. And just like we have a partial understanding of conventional gender roles in society, we don't really have a worked out understanding of why women don't do some of these dirty jobs that men do on road crews and stuff. Like we don't really, and the quality of attitude and disposition that goes in to being willing to do some of those dirtier jobs. So we can talk about equality, but kind of paper over the fact that we're not talking about some of the harder jobs that, women don't want to do, right? And there's this assumption that it's a complete inverse in the household, that it's men who don't want to do the harder jobs in the household. And it's women who are already doing the harder job. So if you just kick out the men, all you'll get is like the easier job of whatever they contributed to the household. But it turns out, what if they were also contributing the harder job in the household? Just, not the obvious one. What if, a lot of people out there, kids could have done better with a father. And you just didn't think that the father's contribution was important, but yet you didn't understand that you were socialized in your gender identity as a woman, and that only gave you a partial view of the problem and the work. Right? Nobody's stupid enough to say that children don't need their mother. Nobody's children enough, but yet people feel pretty casual about the idea that children might not need their father. And yeah, I think that's a pernicious identity that's a pernicious ideology insofar as we're not honest about the gendered work and expectation that goes into like raising functional kids. And so we assume, and this is different because this changes from ethnicity and culture, because women in the United States, even if they're from other places, are different about this. American women are really ridiculous with respect to the hypocrisies and not being honest about the entitlements that go along, because American femininity was infantilized so that womanhood got associated with needing to be protected from, honestly, black men. Right? So we infantilized womanhood in general in the colonial West, but in America in particular. So we have grown women who are just infants, who are as part of their gender identity, they don't have the quality of maturity that other women who haven't been infantilized in order to keep a racial hierarchy. So that's one kind of problem with feminism in the United States context. Our women have been particularly infantilized because we needed a class of people who always needed to be protected, and then so we could deputize a class of people, white men, who would always be their protectors. And who are they protecting against? This is all a strategy to legitimize racial violence and keep subordinate populations subordinate, right? So we infantilized women as part of a racial strategy in the colonial West. And you look at other women and they're not as infantilized for the same reason. Or if they are infantilized, for a different sort of imperialist strategy to make an ethnic demarcation. Right. So, and if you're aspiring to womanhood, that means you're kind of aspiring to the quality of infantilization. There's no reason for any woman to expect their husband to make more in today's economy. You're expected to be an infant. So make more money outside. There was no, that's, so there are complications in gendered aspirations in the United States, and that makes the feminism bullet bite even deeper, because we have infant women who have been infantilized in order to, as a part of their gender identity, then taking care of kids who then treat kids like puppies, and then are surprised when their kids magically have ADD or magically have some sort of other diagnosis or get some other problem, which comes down to just you were just a bad parent, and you just thought you confused being nice with parenting. A lot of teachers confuse being nice with teaching. A lot of parents confuse being nice with parenting, and then you're surprised when your kid's useless because you never actually took the job seriously. Or you didn't even know what it took to be the job seriously because you were infantilized. Or you're raising your daughter to themselves be infantilized, but then you're annoyed by them because guess what? Infant girls are obnoxious. Or you have no idea what to do with your son, so now you just give him a diagnosis and a bunch of pills. So like I've seen all of these kind of play out in America and it's all kind of governed by the notion that women as parents know what they're doing, and whatever contribution the toxic male was, whatever ideological contribution the toxic male was giving to the household was not actually relevant and important. But it turns out that there was an alchemy that made functional households. I'm not pro, infantilized femininity and toxic masculinity making a functional household. But I'm also not pro like the infantilized woman just deciding that for her own liberation, she should just kick out the toxic male that she got impregnated by and now screw up their kids. Because I'm just not convinced that infantilized women know enough to be good parents without the other part contributing. The male contributing. So I hope this has been useful. I hope this has been useful. I will talk to you. And for some people who say that, it's men who leave. Well, 90% of divorces from college-age people, it's women initiating. And I think it's 60 to 70% of non-college educated people. So this is mostly women thinking that, women thinking that they don't need men. And women thinking that their children doesn't need a full-time father. It's just a casual attitude of that. And I'm saying that's actually child abuse and an ideology of child abuse. We don't talk about it as child abuse, but it is. It is. It's a form of child abuse. Casual divorce is a form of child abuse thinking, and the amount of hubris that goes into assuming that all that it is, all that there is to raise a kid, knowing that you've been gender socialized into huge black holes is really unfortunate. All right. Thank you for your time. I will, blind spots. I will see you on Thursday talking about something completely different. Take care.